Hell yes. Welcome back, or welcome, I guess, maybe for the first time to the Any Given Day podcast. It is a beautiful Saturday morning right now, and it's even more beautiful because I get to spend it with my very good friend, Ben Seims, not Seims, who is, for those watching, you already know this, who is sun-kissed right now and in a tropical shirt. And man, I am so stoked for us to have a long overdue conversation. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great, man. It's real good to be on here and just be able to BS with you a little bit.
Heck yeah. So you've got your hat on backwards, which just makes me really curious for what's on the other side of that thing.
It's a saltwater sea hat.
That feels appropriate because I know that you're into paddleboarding. Are you a doer, a performer of other saltwater activities?
Not very good, no. I try different things,
Yeah.
but paddleboarding's kind of like my thing. Smoking a cigar while I'm up on the paddleboard, that's always one of my favorites. So, unless I'm around a lot of people, I'm usually out there by myself and I'll smoke a cigar and paddle around.
Hell yeah. I was about to ask if like paddleboard for you is like physical exertion or if it's peace, and I think it sounded like more like peace.
Peace, yeah, for sure, for sure. It is fun to bring other people out that haven't paddleboarded before
Yeah.
and teach them how to stand up and how to paddle and how much enjoyment it can be. I don't do anything fancy on a paddleboard.
Yeah.
I just paddle, and sometimes I lay out on the lake. That gets a little dangerous though because I'll fall asleep and you float. I'll end up on the bank of the lake, because you float pretty close. And on a lot of lakes down here, they have water moccasins, so you got to be real careful when you're getting up too close to a bank. Unless I'm on one of the big lakes, which is really fun to get on, then you don't have that problem. I can just float forever out there, except for boats. There's always boats. But I haven't had a problem with like boats being considerate. In Lake Havasu when I paddled down here, that's where my parents are, and I'm down here right now with my mom. They'll just blow past you. They'll just blow past you. And it's always fun to try to stay on your paddleboard, especially the bigger you get. It's a little harder
Yeah.
than when I was a little lighter to stay on the paddleboard. But yeah, dude, it's a blast. Between that and biking, that's really been an important part of how I stay moving.
Feel like one thing people don't realize if they haven't done it is just the stability of just standing on a paddleboard, like just passively existing on a paddleboard in the smallest of wake is like wild. Like your lower limbs are just on fire, but it's fun
Yeah,
as hell.
it is fun. There's this one time, and then I'll stop ranting about power paddleboards. I
No, I
was
love it.
paddling, and there were these fishers on the bank, and they were laughing at me. And I'm just paddling, I've got my shirt unbuttoned, I'm smoking a cigar, and I turn around, and there's this storm rolling in, and I got caught in it, and I could not paddle. I could got down on my knees. I'm trying to paddle, and it
Man.
just blew me completely off my board. I'm paddling, getting back on, trying to paddle to shore, and I'm sitting there in the pouring hail, like rain, hail mix on the side, and they were in their truck just laughing at me.
Well, the first part of that anyway, the shirt unbuttoned, cigar smoking, paddling on the lake, I feel like has to be the cover photo for this podcast. So if you don't have that image, I'm going to need you to get that real quick.
Yeah, I'll work on it. I'll work on it.
So we have it. I do have a picture of you with a cigar.
Yep, yep. I sent you that one. I don't think I could ever take one far enough away to show, and I don't ever, I'm never out there like, will you take a picture of me while I'm out paddleboarding with my shirt off? So it's always like the face down and just the
Yeah.
cigar and maybe my sunglasses. But yeah, it's been a blast. It's really been something that's surreal for me. And yeah, sometimes when the lake is just like glass,
Yeah.
it looks like someone just poured epoxy out on something, and you just glide across it, and it's just beautiful. You see the sky. Sometimes you see a crane like fly.
Yeah.
There's been a few times I've seen a bald eagle. So I was paddleboarding up by in Washington State by Mount Rainier.
Hell yeah.
So, and I was paddling out of the inlet, and you could see Mount Rainier, and you had all these little seals that were coming up, or sea otters, or I can't remember. I always get them wrong, right? Get those mixed up. Sorry, I'm not
It's all right.
not a zoologist.
Yeah. I hope somebody sends an email correcting you on this.
Yes, it's gonna happen. 100%. But it was just such a beautiful scene, and then this bald eagle just swooped down right in front and
Oh my
just,
god.
started to climb. And then one time when I was on the lake here, same thing, it came right down in front of me. It was closer than I would have ever thought I got to one, and it swooped down and grabbed a fish and then just took off, and it was so cool. But seeing those things while you're out, I mean, you got to be outside. You got to be outside doing stuff like that to see those types of things. But yeah, it was cool.
That's just it, man. Nature is unrivaled. I was talking yesterday on the phone with Ryan Antes, who's a former guest, and he was talking about being in New Mexico and this scene where, there were the mountains and then there was like almost inset was like white sands and all of that gypsum and just like describing that scene to me. And I was just thinking about it when he said it. And now you're reiterating it. We forget, I guess, how close we are to something a little more wild and a little less tamed. And then we also, like there's no substitute for the beauty in that. There's no photo, there's no explanation, even the best poem isn't going to do it justice. And I feel like it's just like, I know that's a big part of both you and I in our life is just getting outside.
It's beautiful, and you're exactly right. There's just, I think a lot of people could think of some of their best moments are outside. They're outside in a certain moment in time, or on a vacation, or with their family, or with their friends, or camping, backpacking, biking,
Yep.
anything outside, or those memorable instances that you don't need a picture for, and you can just instantly pull them up and be there.
And it's sometimes the peace, it's sometimes the suffering, it's sometimes the contrast between between the two, right? Like
Yeah.
I was thinking about it as you were describing the placid, water. The coolest time I've ever had paddleboarding, and I actually haven't paddleboarded that many times, but I did a trip cross country and I was coming back solo and I pretty much just hit terrible weather like the whole way home. And I was in Missouri at a campsite, and that night was the wildest thunderstorm I've ever experienced in my life. And I was outside in a tent under these trees that I swore were going to come down. They were hundreds of feet tall. The wind sounded like a freight train. There were tornado warnings nearby. Like it was crazy.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, I actually think I bitched out and I left the tent and went into my truck at one point because I was so sure that I was just going to wake up under a tree. But the next morning was dead quiet, total peace. And I went out on a small, maybe lake or pond. I'm not really sure which. And I think I have a picture of that water. I didn't take my phone on the water purposely, but I did take a photo before I got on the water. And it is so still, and it was glass. And then the reflection of the trees, and I remember like there were turtles on a log and you could see them in the water as well, and I was just like, part of the reason that morning was so special was how shitty the night prior was.
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. There's got to be a little bit of it, and the contrast is beautiful when you have it. When you had to work real hard for something or get through something that was a little extreme, and then you get the peace that comes afterwards. And it's such a cool contrast to have that.
I think a lot of us too after service tend to seek that peace without realizing that we earned that peace. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Yeah,
I
and
think the earn part of it can be such a challenging thing because I feel like a lot of my friends, a lot of the circle that that I know as we come together, are very selfless, and it's hard to say when you're doing something, oh, you earned that or you earned this, and you really did. But it's hard to say that. I think at least for me it is, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn for people, but I definitely have felt like it's a selfless act to serve, and it is something that you just did. Like you just do it and you
yeah.
do all the things that come your way. And you're like, no, I just did that. And people are like, you don't understand. Like my email went down and it was the worst day I ever had. And I was like, oh, okay. you know, and so I feel like we're drawn to the outdoors. We're drawn to serenity. We're drawn to camaraderie and commiserating in misery over certain things. And then going through those hardships and then enjoying what comes after. I think it's that, I know it's so stupid, but it's that work hard, play hard. If
Yeah.
I can work really hard, I can do these things and I can be a part of it. And I'm going to enjoy my friends around it. And then when we meet up, like when I get to meet up with you, I get to tell you all these things, like what we're talking about now, and you get to share that experience with me. We both went through very similar things, So,
Yeah.
um, at least for those, and it's always a little same, but just a little bit different. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you didn't even know you were setting up a transition, but speaking of drawn to, a story I know nothing about is what drew you to service? Like, what did that time in your life look like?
People laugh at me, but I was really drawn to it. So I really wanted to serve. I was really drawn. I felt like it was a calling for me. I started life really, really young. So I took on a small family when I was 16, and I ended up having my first son when I was 16. And shortly after that, that was my son Andrew. My I have I had come into a small family already, and that brought me Brianna and Brandon, my son and daughter, and then it brought me Andrew, my oldest biological son, and then Tanner, my middle son. And I was like in a really bad spot before that, so I had been homeless from the time I was 14 through 15, and had to grow up really, really fast because I was kind of couch surfing and living in parks. One time I was in the back of my friend's dad's van, and he totally was like, "Yeah, it's fine to sleep there. Don't worry about it." I woke up and his dad was like pulling me out of the back of the van, telling me to get out of there. So really, that little family saved my life because I ended up graduating high school and looking towards serving and doing something there. I had this small family, so I couldn't really leave. I was separated from their mom at the time, so I didn't want to give up being close to my kids. So I ended up joining the Army National Guard, and that was like a big deal to me because I could do what I wanted to do as a civilian and be with my family, but I also got to go do this hard work. So when I went to basic training, they said you could wear your state patch, right? They're a little different now because they're aligned. The alignment's a lot different with the division alignment of the guard and the active duty components. The patches are a little different, but for a long time and still today, you have a state patch, and then you have some brigade patches and unit patches. And so I wrote this letter to my first sergeant, and I was like, I'm very patriotic. I would like to have our unit patch so I can wear down here and be proud to show our state and this honor. I never got it. I never got it. But when I went home after I got out of AIT and went home, so at the time I was 11 Mike, so I was in a
Okay.
Bradley.
Yeah.
But I was a dismount. But you learn to drive the Bradley, but I was a dismount, so I was always real happy about that, which would bring up another funny story. But anyways, I got home and I came and reported for duty, my first sergeant. And if anyone's been in the guard and reports for duty for their first back in the late 90s, and you report to your first station, it can be a little, I mean, you were at basic training with all these active duty guys. People are picking up RIP contracts and airborne, and there's all like, you're just pumped, man. You just did all this stuff. You're like getting kicked in the back of the head because you couldn't clear a weapons jam. You're like, you're being told you're stupid all the time, and you're just loving it. You're like so good at everything. You're just like, you can't smoke me, Joe Sargent, and they're just like killing you. And then you come home and they're like, it's not that. I don't want to say anything disparaging, but it wasn't that. And they're like, well, you're the one that wrote that letter. And they were making fun of me the whole time. And so I was like, I don't know what I got into. I don't know what I got into. So I immediately started looking on going to active duty, doing something different, trying to, because I really felt a calling to it. At the same time, I had this small family. So I had to really try to navigate what I really wanted to do with the kids getting into school and being toddlers and doing those things. So I stayed in the guard, but I did some full time recruiting stuff for a
Okay.
little bit, which was not my game at all. It just wasn't. It still isn't. But I ended up going to school and just doing odds and end jobs for a while. And then, let's see, 2001 happened, and it was just, I was active from then on for a long time. And then I got back, finished school, I became a nurse. So it was this weird thing where you're a nurse on the civilian side and you're at 11 Bravo, because we switched from Mikes to Bravos on this side. So I ended up feeling this dual hat of being like a medic, but also just being a rifleman and just a straight 11 Bravo, nothing special, no like
Yeah.
craziness, just a straight leg, and also being a guard bum. So you'd pick up all these guard bum jobs, which eventually led me to working in the MFT program, which is now the HTOP integrator program. So Washington State, there's 3 guard units that have a school, MFT school, and it's Washington, Texas, and Georgia. And so I was up in Washington and ended up picking up a job being an instructor there. And then I would just do that for most of the year and then pick up other little orders here and there to do different trainings, do stuff for OCS, do stuff for walks. So that was pretty much my full-time job. And then I would come home and nurse. So I would come home and pull up some shifts so I could keep my nursing license. And that's the job side of it. It was always hard to balance that with family life. So that
Yeah.
was where, if I look back, I really wish I would have done a better job at, is just, I was always so into what I could do next for the military, what I could do next. I always worked high stress, high end jobs, ER, OR, heart cath lab, ICU, did a little stint at Madigan, you know, instructing for 2 weeks at a time is very difficult, when you have to be on all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
Oh, yeah.
and then coming home and trying to be present for your kids was always something that I thought I did really well. And, come to find out later in life, I really didn't do that well. I didn't balance and juggle that very well. And my kids grew up before I knew it and they were graduating, and I have these memories. I have memories where I know I was there, but I
Yeah.
was always so busy with the next thing that I blinked and they were graduating high school. I had a really weird, I had a pretty successful military career. But that being said, I had not. I don't want to say I was unsuccessful on the outside. I just had a lot of ups and downs. So I had, especially after we got back I deployed from 3 to 5. That was after mission complete.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
my only deployment. But after that, things got real rocky for me, and I went through 3 marriages. So I put the boys through all of this kind of continued crisis and a new life, new house, new people, new things. And then about 8 years later, I'd burn all the ships, and I would be like, it's like I always had a trail ship, you know, and I
Yeah.
always like looking at it like I can jump over there anytime I want to. I can just, and then I just torch my ship, and then I jump on the next ship, and I'd be like, okay, new life start. I got it good this time. I'm gonna do it right. And so it was hard for me to do that. And then uh, you know, life kind of catches you by surprise sometimes, and all of a sudden you're sitting there and you're like, I should just kill myself. So you actually try to do that, and then you get some help, and things look okay for a little bit because you're getting the help that you need ish. And then you're like, I'm good. I got the help, so I'm okay.
Yeah.
And then you stop. And then, things were okay for a little bit. And then, I, this last time right before I got out of the military, I really was an eye opener. So I just kind of I was towards the end of my career. I really didn't know what I was going to do. I was very frustrated with certain things that the military was doing, and just did not agree with. I felt in my head that the Army wasn't taking care of soldiers. And I felt very strongly about that. And I started vocalizing that a lot. And sometimes, you vocalize things and you think you're you're doing it really well, and you're really not. So I hit a roadblock, and I'd also been gone from my family for like 5 years, geobaching it. And so I flew home and got super drunk and told my family bye. I went and just said bye. This is it. Really, and to me, it made so much sense. I'm sitting in this very public place. I brought them to this really nice cidery, and I told all my boys, I'm like, hey, listen, here's what's been going on. You guys don't have to worry about it anymore. Nobody has to worry about it. I told my ex-wife, who was my wife at the time, like, you guys don't have to worry about it. You know, I've been off and on cheating, just totally off the rails in my life. So I'm all done. It's okay. And I just remember being so logical in my head and everyone else just like freaking out. And of course, there's all these people. I remember back now, and there's all these people just staring at this scene that's happening around them. And so my boys tried to put me in this car and take me to the emergency room. And I was like, no, we're not having that. So I popped open the door, and I was like seconds from like there was a car coming, and I was just like seconds from jumping in front of that truck. And my youngest son pulled me back in, like just barely pulled me back in. And we all got into this struggle in the car, and they didn't know what to do, so they called the cops. I got arrested. I got arrested the first time I tried to kill myself, and they for my safety, and they put me in. So this is my second time getting arrested, which I never would have ever thought in my whole life as an adult. Made it through all my teen years, being homeless, doing all this stuff, no arrests, and then as an adult, as a professional with a career, here I am getting arrested again. And so this time I went to an inpatient psych hospital down in San Antonio. It's called Mission Resilient, and it's for vets, and it's mainly focuses on combat vets. So I was there for a couple months, and it really, really helped me. And I found out some diagnoses about myself. And I know I'm not an unintelligent person. I I speak these things to people all the time, but it's different when it's you.
Yeah.
And so you get told that what you've been going through is something, and they have you list out all your traumas, every single one. And then you have civilian trauma and military trauma. And so you put those all out, and you kind of look at him like, oh, wow. Oh, wow. And you start to work on them. And then I also found out I was bipolar. So that really kind of gave me, being on the right meds, which has been a struggle. That's been a struggle to find the right, and to stay on them too, because sometimes I miss manic Ben. I miss
Yeah.
the like I read 4 books every morning. I work out 3 times a day. I'm sitting there in between my deadlifts reading books. I'm like, you know, off the rails. I'm doing crazy stuff and stuff that is like really risky, but then I crash and then I'm
Yeah.
high again and then I
Yeah.
crash. And sometimes I miss that. So I had to dial in my meds, and then I had some clarity, but clarity is awesome. It also is painful because you look back on everything and you see all of the things that you did that you now have this reason, but it doesn't take away the fact that you still did these things. And I
Yeah.
really hurt my family. I really, really, really hurt them. And it's taken us a long time to start to repair that and start to get back to where that was. And I really put the military first for a lot of things. I really put them first. And I thought what I was doing, especially towards the last like decade of my career, that I was taking care of soldiers. That
Yeah.
every sacrifice I made was so it was so important to take care of my family in the uniform that I sacrificed my family at home. And it's taken a long time to kind of repair that and do that. Uh, uh, So anyways, that was my rambling of where I started and where I ended up. I'm medically retired from the military. I have a part-time job now. I tease people because I'm like, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills, and I really am taking crazy pills, but
Well,
they balance me. And I had one more time I had to really use my safety plan, and then after that, I actually started inhaled ketamine. So it's called Spravato, and you inhale it, and you sit there for 2 hours. And since then, I've really been, my depression's better, psychosis is better, my suicidal ideations, which I used to have every day. I mean, I don't know if any out there suffering from that, but when you just think about how to kill yourself all day, every day, and you just so tired and so beat down, and you don't know there's help, and you think it's you, and you think it's normal, and you're like, well, everyone else feels the same way I do, so it's not that big of a deal. You start to just downplay it a little bit, but there is help. There was a lot of help, and there's lots of people you can draw on, and that, between my family in the uniform and my family at home, and my large medical staff, I've gotten to a point where I'm finding peace and joy. And it's funny because you've heard me, I talk about those things. I've always talked about those things. When I
Yeah.
was doing the H2F gig at PEC, I had these, like, I talk about happy, healthy, hungry for life. Here's what you do, like, here's all the things. Here's all the things we know. We know all of these things. And then here I was just crashing and burning. And it's been a wild ride. And, I think, I think I'm finally, it's so stupid. I'm turning 46 this month. And I'm like, I'm finally in a spot where I can kind of ish say I'm in a good spot.
Yeah. Well, a few things, and I have no idea how well I'm going to unpack this, but so many things come to mind as you're sharing your story. One is that the military is unique as a job because, like you said, it's a family. So you are in service, and you're not just in service to your country, but you're in service to that military family. And I have witnessed firsthand over the years, it's kind of primarily the way we've known each other, that you have done an incredible amount to serve that family. And of course, to your point, some of that does take a toll, on yourself and your actual family. One thing that I really, when you talked about dragging that second boat behind and how that was almost like an escape plan, right? That really resonated with me because I have felt that before, of there's always kind of something else that I know I can leap to stay afloat. And I think part of the problem is then we don't put enough effort into fixing, say, the boat we're on.
Yeah.
But the other problem is when you don't have that second boat and you don't want to face the issues of the boat you're on. Well, now we're jumping ship, and the only place to go is on the other side of the dirt. Right.
Yeah.
And that feeling of only having those two options, and the option of, you said it, like the pain of clarity, can be so daunting that it actually feels, I don't know if safer is the word, but safer to take our own lives. You already know you're not alone in having felt that. I am not alone, and I appreciate
Yeah.
you saying everything you said today, because it has reminded me of that. So thank you.
Love you, brother.
I love you too, man. You know, when we get the right crew, right, around us, to kind of keep the metaphor going probably too long here, but when we get the right crew and we have the family and the team of professionals and whatever else we need to fix the boat we're on, to right the ship, to get us going in a good direction. And then I think the last part of that is also realizing that there is no destination. We haven't arrived at good. That doesn't exist. It is a journey in a direction of better or of good or good enough to stay afloat. And we have to continue to work on that journey. We have to continue to navigate. It is a relentless pursuit. It does not fucking end. We don't get the certificate and we made it and we move on. And for me anyway, once I realized that, it's when I really could actually stay on a healthy course. And it sounds like you are in a similar place right now.
Yeah. It's I still dread stuff. I still, like, I go to counseling. Like, I still go to counseling once a week right now to do EMDR, and I dread it every single week. I dread it because I know what I'm going to work on, and but I have to do it. Like I've been traveling back and forth. I told you earlier to take care of my dad on hospice, and I have had to miss a couple counseling sessions and a couple of my Spravato treatments, and so I've been pushing it, and I can feel it. I can feel it when I'm not doing all the work. I can feel when I'm not riding my bike. I can feel when I'm not hiking. I can feel when I'm not using my kettlebell. I can feel it when I'm not meditating, when I'm not doing my breath work. I mean, you really have to do it and you have to live it. And when you don't, when you get too caught up in things, it does just takes you right back to, man, I really wish I would have left that other ship there. Now I don't have that. I'm on this course. I feel good. Everything's working out. Everything's going good. And it can all of a sudden just one little thing and it starts to reel you back to, I don't have another ship, so maybe I'll just go off over the side. I don't have another ship, so maybe I'll just dive in. I don't, and it's so easy to forget I got you. Like you got me and I got you. And we just talked about that. You can call me anytime, anywhere. And I know a lot of my friends can do that, but for some reason, we get to a point and it's like, I don't want to burden you. You know what I mean? And it's not a burden. It's not a burden. And we don't have to do that. So that's why it's just like what you said. Even you don't get it. We don't get a certificate. Even though I will write you out a certificate in crayon if you ever want one, I can do that with a smiley face and sunshine and a boat and me on it, and you can have it. But there isn't
Only
one.
if your shirt has to be unbuttoned and
The
you gotta
cigar be a stick figure with a
that's
six
right.
pack.
It's the only way I'll accept this certificate. You could
So
call it
it's
a
a constant.
certificate of incompletion.
Yeah, it's a constant thing that you have to work on to stay in a course that's going to alter, even that's going to go different ways. It's going to take you different places, and it's a wild ride, but it's totally worth it. And it's totally worth it to share with friends and family, and to share with other people, like be vulnerable and open up to, you never know who you're going to help by sharing your story with. You never know who it's going to impact. So maybe it saves them some pain, and maybe it saves them from, like, literally maybe it saves them. You just don't know. And I look back on my life with a fondness for how wild it's been in a story. And we talk about storytelling all the time. We've talked about this, right? Like, you have to be able to write your own story. You have to be able to tell your story. You have to be able to share a narrative. You're a main character right now in your own. This always blows my mind. You're the main character right now, and I'm a side character that gets to share this narrative with you on this journey for just a little bit. And everyone we come into contact is that same thing. So how lucky are we that we have got to share a narrative, that we have got to be with each other, that we have got to do these things with our loved ones and the people close to us, and be either a side character, a supporting cast, or they get to do that for us in our life. And I think that has been a fond reflection for me to help me heal a little bit. And then once you have that, you can draw on that moving forward to write whatever chapter comes next, and to have, it's kind of like choose your own adventure, right? Like, I'm not sure if anyone remembers those things. But
Hell yeah. The
but
best.
we get to do that, and we get to choose our merry band of people that are going to come along with us. And that merry band of people will literally save your life. They'll literally save your life. And I'm grateful for it every day. I'm grateful for my kids every day. I'm a great granddad. I'm not a
Hell
great
yeah.
granddad. Sorry. I'm a
Wait,
granddad.
and you're great.
No, I got to have
Like,
my first,
wow.
my dad, right before he passed, I got to show him a picture of his great grandbaby. So that's where my head went. And then I'm the first child. I have four brothers and a sister. My son is the first one to have a grandbaby. Sorry, I almost went off on a different path there that I'm not going to talk about
Fun.
today. But my brother served with me and we were deployed together. You know this story. He committed suicide back in 2011. Then so being the youngest in my family, and my youngest son was the first one to have a baby. was pretty awesome to share with my dad before he passed away. So that was pretty cool.
Think to, tell me your thoughts, I guess, as a father, but I know for me, this is a conversation I have often with like Joe Cruz and Jason Clark
Yeah,
about,
those two guys.
spirituality,
Those two guys.
those two guys. And one who's been on here, he was guest one naturally, and the others is a future invite for sure. But
Yeah,
we often have conversations around spirituality because they're very, spiritual and religious individuals. I am not, but I have found that like purpose and faith to be such an essential part of what helps us, right? We need a beacon, we need a North Star. And for me, a big part of that is, connected to fatherhood. And a lot of
yeah,
my faith is that if I do the right things now, as best I know them anyway, that will have a positive effect, on the family moving forward, despite things that I know I've also done in the past to have a negative effect, right? And that we can course correct and we can offset that and I can invest in that in family. And so I feel like that is such a great example of that, right? Like, and for your father, that feeling that he had to have had in seeing the continuation of his family through a great grandson, and he probably felt that same feeling of faith in the future. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm saying this well, but hopefully it
no,
makes
you
some
said it really
sense.
well. It's purpose, meaning, vitality, right? And I might have said it wrong. I have a granddaughter. I don't sure if I said grandson,
Granddaughter. I thought you said
granddaughter.
grandson. Yeah.
Her name's Sage. She's going on. She's just turned 2 months a little bit ago. But I think you're right. I think no matter what you say is spiritual for yourself, I'm not sure if I said that. Whatever you believe in for your circle, if you
Yeah.
have that circle, you can be the healthiest person in all the domains of whatever domains you're saying human performance, optimization, or health are. You can be great in all those, but if you don't have that spiritual core around you, it's easy to zing off into the wilderness. I always say it's kind of like you can be real healthy and you could be floating in space. And how terrifying is that to be floating alone in space out there? Like, I couldn't even imagine how terrifying that would be. When astronauts go out and do their walks, they always say they feel like they're falling. Well, they are, because the way gravity works, they literally feel like they're falling at the rate of like 3,000 miles per hour. So they're crawling out on this thing, falling 3,000 miles per hour. And that's what it would feel like if you let go and you went. You'd be falling like and floating in this thing. Well, when you have that spiritual boundary around you, you zing back to center. You have that safe boundary. It's not porous. It's, sometimes maybe there's some weak spots in it, but you find your way back in. It puts you back to center. And I've found that has been very powerful for me, is just without purpose, meaning, and vitality, and working on those things constantly, it's very easy for me to be just floating in outer space and not know where I'm going or what I'm doing, or have any sense of direction or azimuth.
Well,
So
you
I'm glad you brought that up.
you mentioned, Wild Ben, right? And I feel like that's what you described is that it's somebody who's, they're healthy and they're training hard, probably eating the right things, reading books, consuming everything, but they're not grounded, right?
Yeah,
He's not grounded. And so he's kind of missing that positive gravity that spirituality provides.
yeah.
And that certainly resonates with me when you and then too, I think in those situations sometimes it's like you're outside of yourself observing this behavior.
Yeah, isn't it wild?
It is, it's
It's
absolutely
human.
wild.
Gabe
Yep.
Paoletti always says, he goes, humans, humans. It's just like humans, right? And you never know what led to whatever scenario that the certain humans that you meet every day led them to that. And that's a whole nother conversation of, like, you were in kindergarten one time, you had friends, you had a life, and like, what are you doing under a bridge homeless?
Yeah.
Like, how
Well,
did that happen?
and I think part of it, back to the conversation with Ryan Antes, he is filled with wisdom that he just casually drops. But
I love it.
one of the things he said, and I'll probably butcher it a little bit, but to paraphrase, was that humans have this amazing ability. to run logic and to rationalize, and yet none of us make rational or logical decisions in our own lives, right? And it's like the power of emotion that just drives us to, it's like these things don't compute, and yet here I am reaching for that thing that I know, that I fucking know is going to lead to a less than favorable outcome. But it's
Yeah.
like knowing is not enough. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let me, yeah. Well, and yeah, to tie that, I guess, a little to any given day, I talk a lot about touching the flame, and I think that there's a lot of ways. Like we can touch it and we can get burnt. We can learn from that, or we could double down on it, or we could also learn how to, you know, live with that flame and harness it in a way that provides fuel and provides
Yeah.
warmth and also provides some excitement through risk, but a
Yeah.
balance of all these different things. To touch the flame is not necessarily a universal term. I think it has contextual differences based on how we interact with it.
Yeah. No, I like that. That's why I do these multi-day bike rides. Like one of the best things I ever did was this Arkansas Graveler. I think I told you about it. It was like 5 days. The first one I did was like from Fayetteville to Jonesboro. And then this last year we did kind of central Arkansas. And this year we're doing the Delta. So we're doing from Jonesboro down to Arkansas City. And it's just like you're out there. It's a little bougie. There's bike packing where you carry everything on your bike, which is awesome. I love that too. But this one, they like carry your tent to the next site. So you pretty much just bike from point A to point B, and then you find your little crate and you unload, but you're camping and
Yeah.
you're with all these other individuals that you bike with all day. Then you sit in this camp and you are under the stars, you listen to music, you talk about the hills and the everything you saw. There's a water, you jump in usually because you're so friggin' hot. It's so fucking
Yeah.
hot. It's it's just fun. Like I think backpacking's the same way and hiking through places the same way where you um either solo, some people need to do it solo just to be out there and it's like meditative almost and mindful. I love the commiserating. I love commiserating misery with people. I
Yes.
love that. I love having a shared experience. I love being able to do that. It's just I don't want to say existential,
Yeah.
but it really is. I can't think of a
It's
better word, right?
that's
It is
yeah.
this thing where there's this huge thing that's bigger than you and you just get to be out in it and enjoy it and it takes away all this shit that we just get thrown in our face all day long and all these, are you on this line, are you on that line, are you doing this, don't cross my line, I'm in your face, you're in my face, I don't believe, I do believe, like I just want to be, I know it sounds hippie-ish, but I want you to be at peace, I want you to find joy, however, and I'm going to be here doing my thing, doing that too, and I just will never wish you harm or anything like that. I'm just going to be over here. If you need something, let me know. I'm not going to like isolate anyone or do anything like that unless I really have to. Sometimes you do.
Yeah.
Sometimes you
Yeah.
do. There's some people that are just so angry for whatever reason, and they'll just pick something and go all in with it. And you just have to be like, I can't have that right now. If you need me, like really, really, really need me, I'm here. But right now, I just can't do that for you.
Well, I think too, maybe for you too, but I know for me in the past, I would have engaged with those folks and not in a positive way.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I would have engaged to win. And man, there's so much power in just the ability to disengage and to just be like, you be you, you have your energy over there. I'm not going to have it impact my energy. But if you want to change that, I'm here.
Yeah.
Man, there's power in that versus in the past, the power was in, pulling the person out of their car or whatever it looked like. Hypothetically speaking.
Yeah. 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 It was like you were in it to win it, right? You're
Yeah.
like, I'm going to win. I'm going to win until you're silent and just tell me to fuck off.
Yep.
Because then I know I won.
Yep.
Or, we're going to do other things. We're going to do
Yeah.
wall to wall counseling or something like that. It just was different. And now there's peace in just being like sometimes I dip my toe in just to see where we're at as a nation right now. And then I just pull myself back and I'm like involved in all these other, trying to get veterans into biking, trying to get veterans into hiking, trying to, just let our family know that you are important in your story, and I'd like to share a narrative with you. And if not, then get someone to share a narrative with as best you can. And there's a lot of joy for that in me, which is probably my next gig will be more doing stuff like that.
Well, I definitely feel like you'd be the right person for that. So I hope you do gravitate that direction. That's me being a little bit selfish about would love to have you in this space as somebody who's helping to guide other veterans. I will say that that's part of what you're doing right now on this podcast is providing a voice, a respected voice that other veterans are willing to hear your story and hopefully take some action within their own story. I mentioned it before we started. Always the shittiest part of this is trying to wrap up because you and I are two people who could have this conversation forever. And that's exactly what I want, is for you and I to continue to connect and have this conversation forever. But
Yeah.
to leave us at least on the official, airwaves here, probably tough to do because you are somebody who has literal history of education in this topic. But if you had to boil it down to one piece of, whether it's advice or perspective or whatever it is for the veteran community at large, which I realize is a lot of different types of folks and a lot of different types of situations, but what would be your one piece of advice or perspective for that community?
That's that is a tough question. I think what I always come back to is give yourself a little grace. I think give yourself a little grace and understand that you don't have to be perfect at everything. You don't have to continue a high op tempo. You don't have to. You can be you. Just give yourself a little grace and continue to drive on. But I think one of the hard things for our community to do is give ourselves grace. I think we carry a lot of guilt and shame. I think we carry a lot of we've lost people. And I think, we look back at decisions and time we spent, and we hold ourselves to a lot of guilt and shame. And so I would hope for all of you that you just give yourselves a little grace.
I am definitely not going to ruin that by adding to it. Ben, I cannot thank you enough for today.